we're talking about how the Democrats are over their nifty new strategy of counterinsurgency, which I think is kind of funny to even say, like, yeah, counterinsurgency is our doctrine, because that just implies, doesn't it, that all our wars are colonial wars of occupation and conquering civilians and forcing them to submit to our rule. We didn't fight a counterinsurgency doctrine against the Nazis. That was a war against a giant mechanized state military force. Counterinsurgency is for killing civilians, Kelley.
Right, and you can't. It comes as no surprise, because during the 2008 election, and even before that, you had people like Peter Beinart, who were a Democrat, a writer with the New Republic. I think he's at the Council of Foreign Relations now, representing the sort of moderate Democrat, the muscular foreign policy Democrat, the Clinton-esque Democrat, who basically saw that our military could be used as a, quote, force for good, spreading democracy, changing societies, bringing food and liberty and freedom to suppressed countries across the globe. This was predictable that when the Obama administration came in, this is after he populated it with Clintons, all over, stuck his anti-war, supporters in places, like the UN and hiding away somewhere in the State Department. It became as no surprise that they would support this counterinsurgency strategy, which seemed to fit with their idea that they could be interventionists, but for good, for light, and it's not working, but that was also predicted.
Right. Well, and, I guess to a great degree, I've always thought that, the war machine obviously is not liberal interventionist types. They have to come up with these fig leaves to convince the New Republic writers of the world. Obviously, the publishers know what they're doing. But in order to get these kind of, Clinton-loving Democrat types on board for this thing, they've got to, dress it up as the United Nations, or dress it up as humanitarian aid, or doing good for people in whatever ways. Otherwise, these are people who would tend to be anti-war. But if you can say, look, stop stalling. We've got to invade Sudan to save the people of Darfur now before it's too late. Then, create the outrage for a lack of war when the kind of underlying but unproven premise is that American intervention in Sudan would be a good thing and would help anybody, Right.
Well, I'll tell you what I'm a little bit afraid of. I mean, we look at the surge in Iraq in 2007, and basically that was won by two things. One, paying off the Sunni insurgents to help fight and get rid of the al-Qaeda. And two, the massive firepower that I spoke of before. I mean, I sat there at one of these CNAS annual meetings where David Petraeus got up and he explained detail for detail how they just bombed the crap out of Baghdad. I mean, it was just a matter of using our weapons, conventional weapons, to basically break the insurgency there. I'm afraid when I look and I read this week that all the embeds have been canceled for the big operation that they're doing outside of Kandahar, the big operation in which we will be dropping bombs. We will be using our massive firepower. They have taken the embeds out. So we don't have reporters, or at least the ones that, we don't have the mainstream quote-unquote reporters, the ones that are actually, able to get out there to tell us what's really going on. So I'm afraid that they're just going to basically bomb them into submission and then turn around and say, Petraeus did it again, we got rid of the Taliban, let's get out of here. And then when everything hits the fan 10 months later, nobody's paying attention.
Yeah, but the thing is, I mean, look at what they did to Fallujah. They decimated Fallujah,
right.
But they didn't pacify it.
Right.
They never pacified Fallujah until finally they accepted the offer that the Sunni-based insurgency had been giving all along, which is just let us patrol our own neighborhoods and we'll stop fighting you, And so they can bomb Kandahar all they want. The Pashtun tribesmen aren't going to do anything except get revenge until all the foreign occupiers are gone. That's the history of Asia, right there. Pashtun tribesmen killing whoever was trying to occupy their land.
Right.
It's been going on for 2,000 years. It's the crossroads of every empire in the world. Hey, we're the Russians. Hey, we're the Macedonians. Hey, we're the Brits and whoever come to occupy this land. And the Pashtun tribesmen say, oh, you think so, huh? And they always win. And the invader always loses.
Right. I'm saying that I'm looking for Petraeus to create some space, some public relations, some tactical space where they could say that they've done their job, or at least enough to bring quote-unquote security to that region.
Yeah.
Get out and
it's
then
like what you
ignore
said about
whatever
Nixon.
happened.
Right, that's what you said about Nixon earlier, making the Vietnam comparisons.
Yeah.
If we just carpet bomb them, they've got to, give in to our demands at some point, right? How much carpet bombing can you take?
Right. And what will our demands be? They might not even be very, we might not even be demanding much at that point. We might just want to get out. Look what's going on in Iraq right now. That is hardly the picture of democracy that we supposedly went over there to bring, or at least facilitate. But we don't care. At this point, we don't care. Nobody cares.
I wonder in the future history coming up, how many generations are we going to have to deal with the consequences of this? You know what I mean? This is a history of the world. Right now, I can sit here and talk for the rest of the show by myself about how everything horrible that's happened since then is Woodrow Wilson's fault for him and Colonel House negotiating America's entry into World War I on the side of Russia and Britain and France there. And so you think about, what George Bush and Barack Obama have done. We're going to continue to have terrorist attacks. You think about the amount of killing that Americans have done as revenge for one day worth of attacks on September 11th, 10 years ago almost now. And think about all the different September 11ths that America has brought to people of Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen, Somalia. We see Somalis leaving America to go fight on the side of Al-Shabaab in Somalia. But how long before somebody blows himself up here over it,
Right. I think all that matters to the military at this point is that they get out of Afghanistan with the least amount of blame, as possible, so that they can continue fighting in other areas like you mentioned, Yemen and Somalia, without this hanging over their heads. So I would expect some massive spin coming down, which will be facilitated and assisted by the Obama administration, because you have the 2012 elections coming up. They have to put the best spin on this too. So expect them to be working hand in glove and doing whatever Petraeus says to do. And
that's very hopeful. I really like that. You think because I guess I was reading the politics of it more the other way, where Petraeus wants to run for president against Obama. He's got to make it Obama's fault and not agree with him that it's time to end the war. Well,
I had that theory, and I wrote about it, within the last, several months. I think it was May I wrote about that. I've been talking to people just on my own and curiosity, talking to Republicans here in Washington who probably would be called upon to do fundraising and all that and feathering the past. And, they honestly don't think that Petraeus is going to run this time. That might change. They might not know what they're talking about. But I'm not seeing any movement in that area. But I could be wrong. That is definitely a theory that I've had and I find interesting. I do see the politics already gelling after Woodward's book came out, which of course the right wingers have seized upon some comments that Obama made about politically he needed to get out of the war, anything to get out of the war. So they're already using that against him. So I would imagine there's going to be this is going to be made a political issue, that Obama didn't have the stomach for it. He put politics over national security. And if he hadn't set that 2011 deadline, that maybe they'd be doing better in the field. So I would expect to see a lot of blame being put on Obama right now, definitely.
Yeah. Well, and you know how the Democrats are. They'll never just stand up and say, no, your policy is what's destructive, and we're doing the right thing.
They just slither away.
Oh, well, same story, different day. Thank you very much, Kelley. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Scott.